and thank you for coming tonight to... It's not. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight for personal stories of redemption and recovery. We've had a lot of storytelling events here at the center, and we appreciate the Weaverville Center for Creative and Healthy Living. I think tonight is going to be a really special night, and I'm so glad all of you can come out. We do have appreciation baskets at the back of the room, so if you enjoy what you hear tonight, leave a little something in appreciation. And we are very appreciative of our sponsor tonight, which is the Wilma Dykeman Legacy, is co-sponsoring this. They do really wonderful work. You know, they're continuing on the legacy of Wilma Dykeman as far as an environmentalist and as far as being active in social justice causes. And they particularly support the written and spoken word. And we really appreciate their involvement and partnership with us tonight. But our first teller tonight is Ray Christian, and he's from the Boone area. And he grew up in the slums of Richmond, Virginia, and then joined the U.S. Army at 17. As an infantryman and paratrooper, he served around the world and was awarded the Bronze Star and the Combat Infantryman's Badge. After 20 years, he retired and went back to school. He earned a bachelor's degree in liberal arts, a master's in public history, and an education degree in education leadership. He's been a very popular adjunct professor at Appalachian State University, and two of his very popular courses were The Souls of Black Folks, an examination of African American social culture, and Storytelling, Life in Narrative. His stories have appeared in Reader's Digest editions. They've been featured on many NPR radio shows. As a competitive storyteller, he is a 10-time Moth Story Slam champion. Yeah. He won the National Storytelling Festival Story Slam in 2016, and he was on stage in 2022 as a featured teller at the National Storytelling Festival. He's currently a producer and host of a podcast called What's Ray Saying? And he uses history, storytelling, and commentary to provide a unique perspective on the African American cultural experience. He's been called a storyteller's storyteller, and he's distinguished not only for his exceptional accomplishments as a performer and spoken word performer, but also for his training and experience as an educator and a motivator. So please welcome Ray Christian tonight.
The introduction was probably longer than the story I'm about to tell. Well, greetings from Boone, North Carolina, where the black population is less than 1%. Feeling like home? Good to see you, good to see you. Tom.
Sir.
You served in the United States Navy?
Yes, sir. Yes,
How long? How long did you serve in the Navy?
21 and a half years.
21 and a half years. I appreciate your service. Of course, I was in the Army. The best place. So now I'm gonna have to tell people about a very little known fact. You know, we only accept people in the Army with cool names. You go to an Army recruiter and you got a name like Cletus or Aloysius or Tom. They'll reject you, send you right down to the Navy recruiter. You didn't know, only, beautiful women and guys with cool names can get in the Army. You just probably didn't know that, but just thought I'd let you know. This night, this particular theme, deals with redemption and mental illness and recovery. And I would just tell you before I get started and before the other storytellers come on stage that, you know, a broken computer can't really analyze itself. So when you're telling stories, when you hear stories and there's an element of mental illness or depression or things like that, you know, you just have to take them from the perspective of which they're presented to you. With that in mind, I'll tell you a little bit something about myself. I was unusually sensitive when I was a kid, and I had a great love for animals. In fact, I used to bring home every lost dog, cat, a wounded bird that I could find. I thought of myself as maybe the Dr. Doolittle of the black community. But you know, space was an issue, and I always wanted to have my own zoo. But I started small, started with the flea circus. I can't tell you how difficult they were to collect. Nothing like I thought it was on TV. Later on, I moved up to, I ordered some sea monkeys. They didn't look anything like they did on the comic book, back in that comic book. They had no houses, no leather skin, didn't talk, smile, or nothing. Then I got a geopet. It's not really a pet at all. I thought people were impressed or amazed when they saw me walking down the street with all these cats following me. And I really did try to herd cats. In fact, at one time, I probably had about 40 cats, 15 dogs, maybe 50 pigeons, turtles, rabbits, everything. I loved my animals. And I thought everybody in the community loved the animals just like I did. But the reality was, most of the people in the community, they thought I was weird, strange. They wanted to know why my parents allowed me to keep all these animals behind the house. They called the health department, dog catcher. They came, took away my animals. And it didn't take me long in my community to realize if you were a man or a boy, to get respect, you had to be tough. So at some point I learned to put away my more sensitive side. I started playing football, I wrestled, and right out of school I joined the Army. And I became a paratrooper in the infantry. And it was hard. And at some point, the Army went from being my stepping stone in life to being my island. And after nearly 20 years, lots of deployments, losing friends, seeing people die for so-called noble reasons and for no damn good reason at all. Having been on details to inform people that their relative had died, worst duty I ever had in the Army. But after all those years, you know, at some point, there were cracks in my personality. I would come home, the guys I was working in my department, they would say things to me like, hey, Sergeant Christian, you seem kind of nervous, jumpy, agitated all the time. That's because I was nervous, edgy, and agitated all the time. It was as if I would have this sensation that would overcome me, like I would be angry and agitated, and then I would look around in my environment to try to find what was making me irritated. And then I'd want to attack it, strike out at it, say something about it, yell about it, get mad about something. And it never seemed to change. Well, right about this time, my older sister started living with me. She was on crack and had been living that kind of life, and I guess my other members of my family decided maybe it was time for her to come live with me. I would take care of her, I would look after her, but you can't trust no crackhead. But I love my sister. And it was my habit to collect quarters. I just was in a habit of collecting quarters. I'd roll them up, I'd put them in a shoebox, and I'd put that shoebox inside a closet in the corner. That was my habit. I'd roll roll the quarters. I would come home from deployment. I would look at my quarters. I would roll them around in my hand. I'd look at them, weigh them. It's just something I did. I came home from this one deployment, and I went straight to my room, looked for my quarters. My quarters were missing. And bear in mind, this shoebox full of quarters was heavy. You know, it's more than 10 pounds. It's not something that you casually walk away with. It's not like picking up a quarter off the street. It's heavy, it's got weight to it. So the first thing I said was to my sister was, what happened to my quarters? Did you see my quarters? Do you know where they went? And my sister says, I don't know, maybe somebody took them? Took them? Who would come inside the house, go upstairs, into the room, go to the back of the closet, and grab my quarters in the shoebox and go outside the house? She didn't answer right away. She started stumbling over her words and mumbling, and she said something like, maybe those, with that, I stepped outside. And I saw 3 guys standing on the corner. I said, are you talking about those 3 guys right there? I didn't wait for her to give me an answer. I immediately went inside the garage and I started looking around, walking around, and I found me a baseball bat. And I quick stepped with that baseball bat across the street to them 3 dudes, and I grabbed that baseball bat and threw it back. And the 3 guys were just frozen in fear. And right at the point that I got to the highest arc of my swing and I was about to bash all 3 of them in the head, my sister screamed out from across the street, "Stop! Wait!" Nobody stole the quarters. I took the quarters. The 3 guys are still frozen. And so am I with that bat. And I dropped the bat. And I walked back across the street. And I'm reflecting on the fact I almost killed a man over a roll of quarters. At some point later, I thought, I needed to go walk, something I occasionally would do, but for this particular day, I was feeling extra stressed. I went to the grocery store, and I'm walking through the aisles of the grocery store, and all of a sudden, I had this sensation that the walls, the aisles of the grocery store were starting to close in on me. And I got real agitated. So now I'm trying to make my way out of the grocery store as fast as I can. So I run through one of the aisles, I go right, and I end up right in front of the seafood counter. And I look on the ice, and I see what I think is a human eye on ice staring back at me. And so I say, what is that? There's an eye on the ice. And the man behind the seafood counter looks up at me and he said, "Yes, sir. We get fresh fish every day." I'm out of there. Later, I'm at the mall, sitting on a bench, trying to get my thoughts together. A middle-aged woman appears, and she's got a very, very senior, mature mother with her. And she's walking very slowly, and she's frail. And she says, "Mama, I have to go to the bathroom. I want you to sit right here, and I'll be right back." The mother sits down beside me, she leaves. And as I'm staring off into space and looking around, really don't want any company, I notice that this lady is just staring at me. Just staring at me. So I look away from her. I look back. She's still staring at me. Staring at me. And then she slowly picks up her frail, trembling hand, reaches over to me, and grabs my hand. And I just started to cry. daughter comes back, and she sees this. And she says, Mama, what are you doing? You can't be touching people like that. I'm sorry, sir. I said, no, it's all right. Then her mama said, it's what he needed. It was what I needed. But what is happening to me? I almost kill a man over roller quarters. I'm delusional. I think I see a human eye on ice. And now some old lady is comforting me. I'm a soldier. I'm the United States Army. I've killed people. People listen to what I have to say. What is wrong with me? With some pressure from my chain of command, some encouragement from my wife, I finally made that long step toward seeing an Army psychiatrist. And after a couple of sessions, it didn't take long after that for him to diagnose me with having severe post-traumatic stress disorder with psychotic features. So with that diagnosis, I was relieved from all my official duties for about a year, long enough for me to retire. So now I'm out of the Army, I'm on medication, I got counseling, I got animals. I go back to school, life is good, but PTSD never really goes away. And all my attempts to suppress it, and I don't know the medical reason for this, but at some point all that stress just built up and I had a stroke. Now in the aftermath of the stroke, the only really obvious thing to people was the fact that my left arm, leg was weak, and they don't move very well. And I do a really good job right now pretending that my arm is not that way, but it is. It's really weak, limp. But that's what you can see. But the things that people couldn't see and became more of an issue in my life was the fact that in the aftermath of the stroke, I started seeing the world differently. It was like I was seeing nuances in the world that I had never noticed before. An example would be like Dorothy, when she leaves her black and white world and steps through the door of Oz and everything is in color. That's what the world seemed like to me. I would see a couple, young couple, look at each other in the eyes, and I would start to cry. Because I'd be thinking to myself that the world is really cruel to people that love. And these people don't know me. I'm just looking at people and I start crying. I see a baby. People don't know me. I just start to cry because I think about all the potential in every child is born. I smell bread. I cry because I like bread. But I can't live like this. Every time the stoplight turns green, I'm crying. I see somebody, how are you? So I go to see the doctor. And the doctor says that what I'm experiencing is a result of a stroke. It has a name. It's a pseudo-Bopar disorder or emotional incontinence. It just comes out of me. Right? I just start laughing and crying all the time. Before I tell you what I told the doctor, he told me that. I remember seeing this commercial on TV. These squirrels were playing in the middle of the road, and this car is speeding down the highway. And before the car gets to the squirrels and hits the squirrels dodge, and the car swerves and it crashes. I see that commercial, and I start breathing fast. My heart starts beating, because I'm thinking, wow, all the nuts they must have gathered together. The friendship. So I told the doctor, no thanks. I'll just keep what I got. Thank you.
So our next teller is my co-conspirator, Chuck Fink. We have started these series of storytelling, and we're so happy to have him here tonight. It was really his idea to do this subject matter of recovery and redemption. And he started storytelling after he took a class at OLLI at UNCA in 2012. So just a little over 10 years ago. He's appeared in numerous shows throughout the Asheville area, telling personal stories filled with angst, drama, and a healthy dose of humor. Prior to retiring from a career as a trainer and organizational consultant, Chuck wove stories into his classes and consulting and to any willing listener. But Chuck's real legacy, or he considers his real legacy, comes from founding the Men's Wisdom Works. It's an organization that has 22 men's groups that he created for aging and retired men, and it's partly the inspiration for tonight's show. He's a member of the Storytelling Network, the North Carolina Storytelling Guild, and he's the current president of the Asheville Storytelling Circle. He's hosted a radio program called Storyville, in which he interviewed top storytellers from around the world. And with his wife of 42 years, Cindy, he co-hosts their video podcast called In Love with the Finks. And if you don't know Chuck already, you're going to be in love with Chuck.
Hello, everybody. Well, I'm going to thank you all for coming to hear our stories of recovery and redemption. And like Tom said earlier, none of this would be possible without you. My story is one of hope, although it may not sound it when you first hear it, but it's a story of hope. Fasten your seatbelts. You're about to go on a ride on the mental health journey and its ups and downs along the way. And for me, when I was a kid, I was actually two kids. At home, I was Chucky. And Chucky had a mother who was an extreme narcissist, and a father who loved his wife, so he held everything in. He served in World War II, the Depression, he had all these issues, but he kept them inside. My mother was definitely in control of the family, sometimes subtly and sometimes directly. As an example, I was in a car, I was about 13, she was driving. I forget the conversation exactly, but she turns to me and said, "Chucky, whenever you have to make a decision, think first of what your mother would want you to do." Oh, it was a fun childhood, let me tell you. And my father actually was about one other thing. I've made peace with both of my parents. And it's very important in this journey that I'm on, that some of you may have been on, to make peace. And my father was kind of easier to make peace with. Even though he had all of these issues, he really was a kind and good-hearted man. And I'll give you an example of that later. But in order to be there for my mother, he was suppressing all this stuff. And when it came out, whoa, it came out. One time, I came home after the street lights turned off, And his first comment was, I'm going to beat you with an inch of your life. Took out the belt, and I felt it. That said, he also had an extremely good side. Remember, here's a man holding it all in, having to deal with all this, and so I definitely gave him a break. At school and elsewhere, I was Chuck. Chuck in elementary school was popular. He was always in and out of, he was a class clown. And as such, you know, get in and out of trouble every now and then. And then in high school, man, did I flourish. I was in the top 10% of my graduating class. I had a girlfriend, and I was class president. My graduating class had more than 700 people. My junior year, I was elected. My senior year, I ran unopposed. And like any good politician, I could be president for life. Why graduate? Waste all that. But here's where my father came in, and came in so well. I did graduate, and I was considering being the politician of going to the George Washington University in DC. Foggy Bottom, 5 blocks from the White House. If you're going into politics, it's the place to be. What I did mention is we were not wealthy by any measure. To say we were middle class is a stretch. My father struggled in his business forever. And he took me aside, and my mother wanted me to go to the University of Cincinnati because I'd be close to home. My dad takes me aside and says, Chuck, I want you to go to George Washington, and here's why. When I joined the Army, he said, it made a man out of me. Vietnam is going on now. I don't want you to go to Vietnam, but if you go away to college and move away from here, that could make a man out of you. And so I went to GW. And my freshman year, I did all right, and my grades were okay. And then my sophomore year happened. Keep in mind, this is 1968 through 1970. And I got caught up in a few distractions. There was the anti-war moratoriums. There were 200,000 people gathered around. It was a bit of a distraction. Then there were the civil rights demonstrations. Bit of a distraction. The women's movement, a bit of distraction. And there were a couple other distractions. Yeah. So those were the distractions. And by the end of my sophomore year, a friend of mine and I were moving into an apartment, and I was lost. I couldn't make a decision. I couldn't decide what clothes to wear that day. I tried calling home, and I misdialed the number. I was lost in that space between mental health and mental illness. After a while, my roommate said, let's go across the street. Across the street was the George Washington University Medical Center, where presidents and politicians and statespeople from around the world go for their medical treatment, right? I'm up to the psych ward. And it was fairly uneventful. It took some time for me to calm down, and eventually after 3 months, and by the way, the story that I'm telling you now, I was so fortunate to have to go through this then. The mental health system and the insurance system, better than it is today, by far. Still, we walk across the street, I'm in the psych ward, and I get out after 3 months, but 2 bad things happened. It took a toll on me later. I was misdiagnosed as being paranoid schizophrenic, and as such, given the wrong medications of Thorazine and Haldol. Haldol I renamed to hell with it all, because that's how you felt when you were on that crap. But I got out, went back to the apartment, and it was maybe 2-3 weeks, and because it was the wrong medication, the symptoms came roaring back. 1970, so I started walking. I walked around Foggy Bottom, the State Department, the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, and then the Watergate. Before it was a symbol, this was 1970, it was just a big, fancy hotel. Then I walked back to the apartment. I looked down. My feet were bleeding. Being a normal guy, right? I did what any normal person would do. I stripped naked. Talk about a Beltway scandal. And that took me a free ride back to the psych ward. And this time, it was not easy at all. I was not doing well by any stretch. And at one point, I'm walking around in a conference room and I see a picture on the wall, a photo of what I assumed to be a very famous GW psychiatrist. But I looked at it and I said, that's God. If I'm the only one that can see God, I must be Jesus. What a great delusion for a nice Jewish boy, huh? Although Jesus and I do have something in common, being Jewish. Well, then I went into what was called the community area. And let me use my people's language. By this time, I was completely mashugana. I was crazy. I'm a little guy. By the way, in high school, I was also voted most likely to be short. And I weighed 130 pounds then. It took 4 orderlies to wrestle me to the ground so the nurse could come by with a syringe full of Thorazine and shoot me up the butt. And then I was taken to a place called the Quiet Room. It's a euphemism. It had 4 walls, each padded, a urine-stained mat on the floor, and like a speakeasy, only one window on the door where they could slide it around and take a peek to see if you had normalized. When I was first thrown in, I heard voices. It sounded very much like my mother's voice. And then the medications took effect, and I finally fell out. They invited me back in, but I was never, ever happy at that psych ward after that. So even though I was given 3 months at 2.5, I went AMA. It's not the American Medical Association. I tried to apply to medical school. They couldn't read my handwriting because I write like a drunken 3-year-old. They couldn't read it. But it was against medical advice. I told them I was going to grab a plane, go back to Cincinnati, and be okay. The staff said, you'll never make it to the airport. Well, I fooled them because I moved to Cincinnati, stayed there 4 years without any hospitalizations. Oh, there were moments, but hospital-free. Then in 1974, my sister, Barry, B-A-R-I, decided that she was going to get married at the fanciest ballroom in all of Cincinnati, the Netherland Hilton Hall of Mirrors. My dad could not afford this. He was beside himself with anxiety. And as I said before, when he builds it up, sometimes on the receiving end. I'm on the receiving end. This time it wasn't that bad. He takes me aside, and I could just see he was so stressed out. He said, Chuck, he didn't say Chucky this time. Chuck, since you don't have a date, I want you to guard the booze so the hotel staff doesn't steal any. I reeled at the implication that I was to be a security guard rather than just a member of the family. And I started spiraling down. There were other things as well. I started spiraling down. And before the wedding, I was back at a new hospital, this time Jewish hospital in Cincinnati, for 3 months. My sister came to visit before leaving on her honeymoon, and I'm still grateful that she did that. It was 3 months, and I eventually got out, and it was going all right. How many are familiar with Ohio geography? Well, those of you that are will know that 50 miles north of Cincinnati is Dayton, Ohio. And I love Dayton because it was the birthplace of Jonathan Winters. The bank is Winters National Bank. But my parents would go there every Sunday because my mother's sister lived in Dayton and they would go to visit. On one of those Sundays, she stops in my room and said, "What did you do last night?" I said, "Oh, I had a date. It was a fun date." "Who with?" "Oh, she was a nurse's aide from the hospital." "You what? Nurse's aide? You know you're not supposed to be dating anybody from that hospital. You don't care about her. You don't care about me. All you care about is yourself. And if you don't change your ways, you're going to go to hell." And they left. They came home a few hours later to find me in that hell on the bathroom floor in a pool of urine. Next to my nightstand were all the empty medication vials. I don't know how long it was, but I woke up and I was in that hospital with my arms and legs bound to the hospital bed. My psychiatrist comes in and actually cussed me out. It's the best cussing out I've ever had. He said, you may think there's heaven and hell and eternity in the universe. He said, you can think that, but physically, that's it. You're dead. That's it. You're 24 years old. Look how much you have to live. And then he said some of those choice words that I can't repeat here. Well, there's no children. I still shouldn't repeat it, so I'll let that one go. But I stayed in and managed to get well after another 3 months. 2 years later, it was my turn to get married. What a disaster. Oh, God. I told her before the wedding, this isn't going to work out. No, I've invited all my relatives from Missouri. You're going to go through that wedding whether you like it or not. It was a big, fancy wedding. My ex's father, he had some trouble with booze. And I will take most of the responsibility, but when you hear my then father-in-law's quote, you might understand it wasn't all me. Here was his quote before he was carried out on the freight elevator because he was so drunk. Chuck, you seem like a good guy. I want to welcome you to the family. And most of all, I want to wish you lots of luck because you're marrying a real bitch. That was the father of the bride. Well, surprise, surprise, shortly thereafter, I'm back in the hospital. The country's celebrating its 200th birthday. I'm back in the quiet room. And in 3 months, again, I get out. And this was 1976. As usual, I'm back in. But this time, two things happened that changed the trajectory of my life forever. The first, it was winter of 1979, the coldest winter on record in Cincinnati. The Ohio River was frozen over. People were commuting back from northern Kentucky to Cincinnati by walking on the frozen river. I had to wake up at like 6:30, catch a bus at about 7:15, go across town where I was assigned to work in a sheltered workshop. My job? Counting and bagging screws. And I was really good at it, I guess, because from that, I applied for a job at the afternoon daily newspaper, the Cincinnati Post, as an advertising rep. And I guess maybe they had a screw loose because they hired me. The second thing was a friend that I met in the hospital. His name was Jeff. His father was an Olympic referee and coach for boxing. Jeff had his own ring of despair. And when he wasn't trying to escape, which was pretty much on a daily basis, he and I would talk. And one day he said, Chuck, what's your diagnosis? And I said, well, they tell me I'm paranoid schizophrenic. He said, I don't buy it for a minute. I think you're like me. I think you're manic depressive. I said, what does that mean? And he told me about the two poles and the mood switches and changes and some of the other aberrant behavior that comes with that diagnosis. And he gave me his doctor's phone number. Get out, 2 years later, 1978, working at the Post, it happens again. But this time, I called Jeff's doctor. He met me in the hospital and said, you know what? I think your friend might be right. He said, there's several ways to see how it is working out, but I'm going to put you on lithium. He said, if it doesn't work, your body will reject it and you'll know it pretty quickly. If it does work, within about 2 weeks, you're going to start seeing some positive changes. In 2 weeks, Chucky was gone and Chuck was back. I was having a good time, I was feeling better, and I was finally out of the hospital. However, the very best medication in the world came to me the following January. I was in a little bar in Cincinnati called the Blind Lemon, It was crowded. I sat next to a table, and next to me was a cute little woman. She's about 5'0", from Massachusetts. Don't hold that against her. And we fell in love. I told Cindy about my diagnosis early on. Both of her parents had cancer. Her father died when she was 15. Her mother died shortly after we were married. So when I told her bipolar, it didn't faze her. And let me tell you something, folks. Living with somebody that has bipolar, and by the way, I am not bipolar. It does not define who I am. It's a medical condition, like someone with a heart condition, someone with liver or kidney disease. You take your medication, you see your doctor, and you keep on working at getting better. So, I told Cindy about it. And by the way, Cindy is a retired professor from the University of Cincinnati. I was not degreed when we met. She also was all the stuff at the university, dean, provost, all these honors. She didn't care. Cindy loved and loves me for who I am. Thank you. We've had a wonderful marriage, mostly. A lot of fun. We love each other dearly, but there are those moments. Cindy has never quit anything, and thank you, she never quit me. When I tell this story, and I used to tell it, people come up and say, "Oh, you're amazing how you did all that." Bull. The real hero of the story is this woman right here, 5'0". Come on, stand up. Let me see how tall you are. And that may sound like it's the end of the story, but there's a little bit more. Cindy and I were blessed to have 2 sons. Drew is now 39. He's an IT executive, which means he's kind of left-brained. Greg, his younger brother, is right-brained. He's an actor out in La La Land. And something happened when Drew was 16. It's going to surprise a lot of people. He had zits. So I had to take him to the dermatologist. The dermatologist wanted the family history. And I said, "Can I see you privately?" Because I wanted to tell him about the bipolar. And he said, "Have you told your son yet?" I said, "No." He just looked at me and said, "It's about time." I go back home and I asked Drew to sit on the couch. And I told him, "Remember, this is an IT guy that's not emotional." He cried his eyes out. He hugged me and he said, "Dad, I don't care, I just love you." A few years later, it was time to tell his younger brother, Greg, who had a completely different reaction. I told Greg pretty much the same story I'm telling you, minus a lot of the gory details. And Greg just says, "Bull. I don't believe it. There's no way. You were Cub Master for 9 years." "Yeah, I was." And he said, you were a coach. You're funny. We just have so much fun with you. It can't be true." I put my arm on his shoulder and I said, "Greg, it's true." Then there were only 2 other pieces of unfinished business I had to attend. One, people that have a diagnosis of bipolar aren't always able to keep jobs. Let me tell you, with this poem, with this personality, with this charm, I could get any job I wanted. Keeping it, not so much. I was either fired or quit for the same reason. I could not stand bad managers. Maybe it was my childhood coming back, I don't know, but I couldn't stand bad managers. So, I finally found a cure for being fired. In 1981, I started Think Inc., my consulting practice, based on bad management. Yeah, I help manage, I also help the businesses and the employees by training people how to supervise and manage people decently, with respect. That was also, I guess it goes back to counting and bagging screws. I found out I could make a difference. The second thing, that elusive college degree. This is 1990. We're sitting around the dinner table and Cindy is telling me a story about a woman who came in and wanted to get her degree. She was an editor, here's the irony, at the Cincinnati Post. Her staff of writers were all degreed. She wasn't, she wanted to go back. And Cindy advised her, she said, you know, as a non-traditional student, old fart, the University of Cincinnati may not be right for you, but there is a fully accredited university in town that's made for non-traditional students. It's called the Union Institute and University. And they accept all your prior credits. I heard that, and I went to town. I dug up all the GW credits, and I had taken some other courses while in Cincinnati, pulled them all up. I applied for it, I got in, and a year and a half later was commencement. Guess where? That's right, the Hall of Mirrors. So, life had come full circle, and this was such a defining moment for me. Sitting in the audience, first of all, I was valedictorian. I go from being a college dropout to valedictorian. In the audience, in the very front, my parents, my two very young sons, guess who? Cindy. And it was such an amazing moment. But then, when I was able to speak, Cindy climbed up to the balcony with her video camera to try to shoot it, and it kind of looked like Romeo and Juliet. Except nobody died. So, it was an amazing moment in my recovery. When I talk about recovery and redemption, Cindy is my redeemer. Cindy, you mean everything to me. So, despite a year and a half in hospitals from 1970 to 1978, a couple of visits to the quiet room, wrong medications, and all that stuff, I would not change one thing. Because if I did, I not only would not be here, I may not even be alive. So let me end as I paraphrase a famous philosopher, Friedrich Nietzsche. This is a paraphrase. What didn't kill me made me saner. Thank you all.
So I'd like to welcome back to the stage Ray Christian, and then we'll wrap up with our final storyteller. But please welcome back Ray Christian, everyone.
I was going to say something about the CIA monitoring me, but given the topic that we're talking about, this is maybe a story about redemption. It may not be, but I'll only throw out one word of psychiatry in this particular case, and that would be by proxy. You know, somebody else is crazy, they make you crazy. By proxy, I'll just say that. This story is not quite as serious as the other one. In fact, I've gotten in trouble for telling this story. So I'm going to edit portions of it. You just have to use your imagination. So I was stationed at Fort Bragg. I was a paratrooper in the Army. And it's not unusual in that community that's around Cumberland County, Harnett County, North Carolina. Because of a lot of military operations, a lot of night parachute jumps taking place, a lot of soldiers scurrying in the woods on the boundaries of the base. So it's not unusual for the sheriff department to get calls about aliens, UFOs, Bigfoot sightings. Not unusual in the environment. Also, what's leading up to the situation I'm about to get into is the fact that the only thing that soldiers fear in combat is death. Your threats things that you might want to do to them punishment-wise, fears that you're trying to impose on them, don't really work under those circumstances. So people do what you tell them to do because they trust you, they have faith in you ultimately. You won't throw away their lives, you won't waste their lives, you're going to take care of them. But to get the people to start thinking like that, you got to have that feeling before you get into any action at all. And the way that you show soldiers, sailors, Marines that you care about them before you get into any action is the concern that you show for their personal lives. Little things, you know. They need time off, they get sick, things bother them, things come from home, you show an interest, you talk to them about it, because you want them to trust you, have that faith in you. So, it was from that perspective that I made my first mistake. I get this phone call, one of the guys from my unit, he's panicky, kind of nervous in his voice, and I probably shouldn't have took this phone call at all. I had been drinking, but remember what I said before, you know, I'm trying to show these guys that I'm loyal, but I've been drinking. That may or may not be important to this story. You'll figure. So, one of my team leaders calls me on the phone. He's all panicky and shaky, and he says, Sarge, we really need you to come out here. Come out there. Come where? For what? What's the problem? It's late. What's going on? He says, Sarge, well, one of the guys has been shot. Shot? How? What? We ain't deployed. We not training. We ain't got no rifle ranges going on. What's going on? Did he was he robbed? Was he committing a crime? Did the police shoot him? What's going on? What do you mean guy got shot? What are you calling me for? Take him to the hospital. I said, Sarge, it's really hard to explain, but you really need to come out here. Come out there? What? Why can't you explain it to me? Why don't you take him to the hospital? What are you calling me for? Sarge, I really can't explain it. You really need to come out here. It's my second mistake. So, even though I'd been drinking, I'm gonna go out there. What in the world could this possibly be? I'm just swirling around in my head. What kind of nightmare scenario am I about to run into? So, I went out to this place way out in the rural countryside. There's a trailer, there's a big old light out there shining on this thing. 3 of the guys are standing out in front of the trailer. They're drinking beer, kicking the dirt around, smoking cigarettes. I walk up to them, I'm out of breath. What's going on? Who got shot? What's the situation? They just mumble, start kicking dirt. I don't understand what they're talking about, so I push past them. I go up the steps of the trailer, snatch open the screen door, and what I see on the couch is so outrageous, so over the top, so crazy, so out of this world, I can't even tell you about it until I give you some background. Some context, and make this make sense. And this is where I'm going to edit part of the story because I don't want to get in trouble. Well, statute of limitations. Well, you'll figure it out. It was not unusual back then for single soldiers to join together and maybe get them an apartment or something. In this particular case, to rent a trailer, you know, for the purpose of going out there off base and, you know, engaging in shenanigans, misadventure, I don't know, grab ass, whatever you might want to call it, you know. All of it usually involving nudity or alcohol and nudity or whatever. So, again, to try to keep track of what the soldiers were doing, to have an excuse to go out there to visit them, you know, we used to conduct what we called health and welfare inspection. Which is, you know, it's got good intent, but its real intent was for us to see what's going on. You know, because I had heard things. I had heard things about what was going on out there. But again, to give you some more context. So these guys, they went to a Halloween party. And Sergeant Brown, one of the crew, had bought this really cheap gorilla suit. Kind of orange looking, big old feet. And so they come back from the Halloween party and they're one of those mini marts, convenience stores with the gas station. So they're out there, and so Sergeant Brown keeps the suit on. And as people are showing up at the gas station and leaving the gas station, they see the gorilla. And then people are getting shocked, whoa, this gorilla in the parking lot, whoa, 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 Now, them being geniuses, they kept this idea in their head. And they said, what would be funny? If we go out to one of these rural roads, and you put on that gorilla suit, and start walking up and down the road, and we're going to scare the hell out of some local folk. Yeah, good idea. So they're out on one of the roads. Sergeant Brown is walking up and down. They're a little further away inside the car, having some yucks as cars are passing by, slamming on brakes, slowing down, speeding off. And unbeknownst to them, though, at about this time, reports are already starting to file into the sheriff's department. There's a Bigfoot out on the road. Well, come on out here. But before that happens, a bunch of good old boys in a pickup truck, they pass by and they see Bigfoot. Well, they turn around and come back and they stick a shotgun out the window. It's just birdshot. And they shoot Bigfoot in his butt, in his back, and back in his head. They blast him with birdshot. But they don't take him to the hospital. They take him back to the trailer, and they call me. So back to the trailer. I pull the door open, and this is what I see. Sergeant Brown is laying on the couch, on his belly. He ain't got nothing on the top. On the bottom, he got these gorilla pants and these big old gorilla feet on. He's smoking a cigarette. He's got a beard. He just looks up at me and he goes, "Hey, Sarge." Now, his butt, back of his legs are all matted and bloody, and it's got the fake gorilla hair all stuck to it and dried. I don't call the hospital, or ambulance. Maybe I could do something. So I look at it, and it's looking pretty gnarly. And I started pulling down his gorilla pants, and little bird shots started popping out, up in the air as I pulled it down, and it looks pretty awful. I take a rag and I kind of wipe it, but I don't know what I'm doing. So I get an idea. I'm gonna call this medic that I know. So I call him on the phone, he answers, and I say, "Hey man, listen, guy's been shot out here." And he said, whoa, I don't need to hear any more. I'm not coming out there. Take his ass to the hospital. So now I gotta guilt him quick, I said, "Hey, what do you mean you're not gonna come out here? We gotta stick together, we bond together, we boys, we need you, we support each other. What do you mean you're not?" He said, okay, I'm coming out. He comes out with his aid bag. He cleans him up a little bit, picks out a few pellets, and he says, he may be okay. It could be just superficial. But if one of those pellets penetrated his colon, he could die from that. And I don't know what to do. I said, "Well, what do you think we should do? Who should we talk to next?" He says, I know. Let's call the medical sergeant. Good idea. Get him on the phone. He calls him up, and I can hear the medical sergeant in the background saying, "Hell no, I'm not coming out there. Take his ass to the hospital." I snatched the phone from the medic's hand and said, "What do you mean you're not coming out here? We can't trust you. We depend on each other. We bonded together. We can't depend on you. You ain't gonna help one of us." He said, "Okay, I'm coming out." medical sergeant gets there, and he pretty much does what the medic does. He cleans him more, he examines him a little more carefully, he removes a couple more pellets, but then he expresses the same concern that the medic had. He said, I think he'll probably be okay, it's just superficial. But if one of those pellets penetrated his colon, he could die from that. And we're not gonna let him die. All of us are gonna have to fall on our sword, if that's the case. But there is something we might be able to do. Listen, if he comes to the aid station on sick call, we might have the instruments, the tools that we could kind of look a little bit better. Great idea. So, the next day, I escort Sergeant Brown to the aid station to get examined in private. Unfortunately, when the other medics hear that this guy has showed up, because what the medical sergeant said was to say he has hemorrhoids. Say he has hemorrhoids, that'll give us the reason to do the kind of examinations we need to do. When the other medics heard that there was a hemorrhoid, they all wanted to be there. Because for training, they don't get a chance to do this every day. They bandage wrappers, they give out aspirin. The physician's assistant heard about this and said, great training opportunity. All the medics show up, 15 of them. They want to touch the hemorrhoid, look at it, examine it, have a lecture on it. This is a great training opportunity. The medical sergeant rushed from the back, grabs me by the arm, and he rushes me outside. He wants to talk to me. Go outside and go, what's up? He said, listen, get him out of here right now. Go, you gotta go. No, he can't be seen. No, everybody knows about it. Get him out of here. I said, what am I supposed to do? He said, well, right now, you're gonna have to check for infection. And they're gonna have to check every day. Well, how do I check for infection?
Oh, no.
You're gonna have to look. Look for what? Any streaking, any foul-smelling discharge. Man, I'm thinking in the beginning, I can't do this. I could barely put my hands on the man's buttocks. But after a couple of weeks and some good natural sunlight, I could just, he would come in, drop his pants, not even a problem. After many weeks of doing this, he healed, he got better, didn't need any other treatment, and he went on to actually get reassigned to another base. Many months later, I was on that same base in temporary duty, and I ran into him, and I went, whoa, dude, man, how'd that injury turn out? And maybe we hadn't seen each other in a while. He said, well, why don't you see for yourself? We went right to the bathroom, he dropped his pants. I looked, but as soon as I did that, this private walked in. And he turned right around and left. Every time that kid saw me on base after that, he would just smile. I don't know what he was thinking. So, if you should see a Bigfoot walking around in the bushes, it could be just somebody lost, just can't find their way. And if you should see a man looking inside another man's buttock, maybe they just hadn't seen each other in a while.
Folks, I'm back here not to tell, but to introduce our next teller. Drew Carter is one of the most special people I think I've ever met. In my age, 73, to me it's important to give back. So I teach storytelling classes here. Some of those victims are still in the audience now. But Drew came up to me as this class was starting, and he'd been to these shows before. He just said, I want to learn how to tell. And I realized, it's not the class. I'm going to coach Drew. Drew has severe traumatic brain injury, TBI. He wanted to learn how to tell so that he could go to TBI support groups and be able to help them. And I have to tell you, for me, meeting new people who are good souls, who are interesting and who have something to say is very important. So I decided this show is going to be for Drew. Drew inspires everybody, and he inspired me. And I thought, what a great example of recovery, redemption through strength, through dedication, through hard work, and just by being Drew Carter. Ladies and gentlemen, Drew Carter. We're having a little technical difficulty, folks.
Come on.
Tom's working on it.
Okay, mic check, everybody. Thanks so much for coming. Oh my goodness, can't believe it. I'm really blessed. More than you know. Yeah, so some of you know I'm a TBI survivor, like he said. I try to tell a lot of people about it, but I was gonna just run it by and see what that has to say about me, about people in general, about this. So yeah, I was my accident. I was at Western Carolina, right? High school, right?
Yeah.
In Western Carolina. Who knows Western Carolina, right? Okay, yeah, party school, huh? Yeah. One of his. Anyways, yeah. So I was at right out of high school at Western Carolina, and I was going to school. So a bit of a party school, but I got by first semester with just a C. So I was put on probation at then, and anyways, so it's party hardy we tried. We were throwing down like freshman kids do, right? So I was at a fraternity party, a little boys club party, drinking and talking to the sisters and that whole scene where I wasn't acting so responsible. I was a kid. I was in college. This is awesome. What? Come on. Yeah. So I was at that party, and the party. It was I had a friend that was president of a little boys club, and he, so he's got kicked out of school. So we're at Sigma Nu boys club party for my friend that got kicked out. Anyhow, so I've talked to one of my friends that hung out with us then, and he said, well, we really weren't really drinking that much that night, especially, and just average. But yeah, so what happened to me is I was partying at the party, that stuff, and I walked outside because it was little boy rules, like guys out, girls in, use the restroom. Their little kid stuff, anyhow. So I walked out the house and walked around the corner and tripped over a retaining wall, about, they said 15 foot. Hit my head onto the concrete, I say I died because my heart stopped, but yeah, so I fortunately knew Casey Lane, this lady that knew CPR, and so she started my heart back the first time, right? And yeah, so once everybody knew about my accident, knew about me, they were all trying to hide the beers, get the beers away from the party because we were throwing down really hard. Yeah, so that night I was flown from Western Carolina area, and I was actually fortunate enough to be in a faster helicopter that might have saved my life. But the faster mama at the hospital helicopter, some people know it anyways. And I got to the hospital and I was in ICU for a month or two-ish, and was pretty much in a coma. They induced a coma just so I wouldn't wake up not being able to do, kind of shocked. It would shock my brain, they said. Yeah, so then 22 years ago or so, I came out of this coma, and that's when they suggested I go to Shepherd Center in Atlanta. At that time it was a state-of-the-art TBI type hospital. While I was at this hospital, so I was in this hospital, coming out of this coma, like learning that stuff for real. I didn't, whatever that looked like that. They said I wasn't progressing fast enough. They told beforehand, when I was in the coma, they actually told my parents to unplug me because I wasn't showing signs or whatever it was. But anyhow, after they kicked me out, I came home, and I remember specifically this one night, one day, that I was getting in a fight with my mom's, and it's been some troubling times with us, but I remember getting a phone call, and where I was butting heads and stuff, whatever, and she was talking, and I remember the phone call, and tears dropped from her eyes, and I didn't know what was up, and how they told her that I was going to go to, well, back then it was Tom's Rehab, now it's Care Partners, anyhow. So I went to Care Partners, doing my therapy, like moving this arm or talking or occupational therapy, all the goodies. I did them, and so. Got back from Shepherd Center, and like, anybody ADD or ADH? What? Yeah, so it's one of the many struggles I've had before. ADD, or they tried to call me bipolar, and they tried to call me this because when someone goes through that, a similar accident, a lot of times they get better up to a point, the body they keep them going, and then they're off, like not being able to walk so well or talk or have some disability, whatever. And so to anybody that sees this or hears this, I really, really would like to tell them don't give up, because they thought I was out and told them to cut the machine off, and I'm standing here now. It's a lot. I really appreciate you guys. I wanted to give shouts out to Karen Harrington, who's retired now, but about I was going to try to make her a support group and get that going. And yeah, so that's basically my gif. I was just letting y'all know what it's like, my best type of, try to explain it. Thanks so much. So then I heard I might get to dance for you guys.
This is how Drew recovered when he was not able to move his arms or his legs. You're in virtue. Is the tension building?
Trying to be
my inconsistency and everything that stopped my mission. I'm so obsessed with me and what I'm getting. There times I miss what you've been telling me. I can't even see the bigger picture. That's not my plan at all. At times I'm selfish, I'm helpless. You're helping this. Get so consumed that I don't got that I'm smart. I'm being transparent with any sweet hard. Confess my tears to you. I hope that's what my friend. I'm just rags, dirt on my Timberland boots. I preach it so you get the truth and know you not alone. I still battle issues that I thought were gone. That's why I trust in you. I need you, I'm in love with you. I see your face, I praise your name. I'll never get enough of you. That's why I trust in you. I need you, I'm in love with you. I see your face, I praise your name. I'll never get enough of you, yeah.
for your mercy. And I ask forgiveness for
Wow, what a story, what a guy, what a recovery. It's a real privilege to be here tonight and to hear his story and see what he has done with his life. And it's great to hear Chuck Fink, and it's great to hear Ray Christian. And we hope that you'll all be back again. We have some great shows planned for next year. Thank you so much for being with us on the recovery and redemption trail tonight. Thanks so much.
One other point, if you will, if anybody could help us put the chairs back, anybody that could, we would really